Sam Walker had been driving his taxi for almost 2 decades through the streets of Hartford, Connecticut. Each day began before sunrise, with Sam steering his worn cab into a world of endless movement. His earnings were modest, stretched thin to keep his small family afloat, but he didn't dwell on what he didn't have. Instead, he found joy in the simple things: his wife Maria's laugh, his daughter Lily's crayon drawings taped to the fridge, and the stories shared by passengers who trusted him with glimpses of their lives. Home was a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. The furniture was secondhand, but the warmth was priceless. Maria worked part-time at a local bakery, and 7-year-old Lily, brimming with curiosity and creativity, often turned the living room into a gallery of her artwork. Life wasn't easy, but it was full of love, and Sam clung to that. One rainy Wednesday morning, Sam's alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. The world outside was shrouded in gray, heavy raindrops streaming down his bedroom window. Hartford was soaked, the kind of day when even routine tasks felt heavier. Sam pulled on his jacket, kissed Maria's cheek as she slept, and grabbed his thermos of coffee before heading out. The heater in his taxi groaned to life as he navigated the damp streets. By mid-morning, his windshield wipers were working overtime, struggling to keep up with the relentless downpour. After dropping off a fare at the downtown bus station, Sam pulled over near a closed coffee shop, hoping for a brief respite. That was when he noticed the man. Standing under the shop's awning, he was drenched despite his attempts to shield himself from the rain. He clutched his stomach, his face pale and etched with discomfort. His soaked clothes clung to him, and his shoulders sagged as if he carried an invisible weight. Sam rolled down the window, the smell of rain filling the cab. "Hey buddy," he called out, "you all right? Need a ride somewhere?" The man turned, his movements slow and unsteady. "St. Mary's Hospital," he said weakly. His voice was barely audible over the rain. "Please." Sam didn't hesitate. "Hop in," he said, unlocking the door. The man climbed in, his motions sluggish and pained. Sam adjusted the heater, hoping to warm the shivering figure in the back seat. Glancing at him through the rearview mirror, Sam noticed the man's head resting against the window, his breathing shallow and uneven. "You don't look too good," Sam said, his voice laced with concern. "You want me to call ahead to the hospital? Let them know you're on your way." "No," the man mumbled, shaking his head faintly. Just get me there." Sam nodded, shifting into gear. The rain was relentless, pooling on the streets and slowing traffic to a crawl. Sam maneuvered carefully, doing his best to avoid potholes that might jostle his passenger. Every so often he glanced in the mirror, worry growing as he watched the man clutch his stomach tighter. When they finally reached the emergency entrance of St. Mary's Hospital, Sam parked as close as he could to the door. He got out and opened the passenger door, offering his arm to steady the man as he climbed out of the cab. "Take it slow," Sam said, holding the umbrella to shield them both from the rain. The man winced as he straightened up. I don't know how to say this," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I forgot my wallet at home. I can't pay you." Sam hesitated for a fraction of a second before shaking his head. "Don't worry about it," he said firmly. "Your health's more important. Go on, get checked out." The man's eyes filled with tears, his face a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you so much." Sam gave a small nod, stepping back as the man shuffled through the automatic doors. He stood there for a moment, watching as the hospital staff hurried to meet him. Sliding back into his cab, Sam let out a sigh. He adjusted the rearview mirror, caught a glimpse of himself, and smiled faintly. Losing the fare stung, every dollar mattered, but he couldn't shake the sense that he had done the right thing. The rest of the day passed in a blur of short fares and rain-soaked streets. When Sam finally returned home that evening, the rain had eased, leaving a damp chill in the air. Maria greeted him at the door with her usual warm smile, though her eyes betrayed the quiet worry she carried about their finances. Lily ran to him, arms wide, and hugged him tightly. "How was your day, honey?" Maria asked, handing him a towel to dry his hair. "Busy," Sam replied, forcing a smile. "A little slow on the money side. Maria gave his hand a squeeze, her expression soft and understanding. "We'll manage," she said. "We always do." As they sat down to dinner, the memory of the man at the hospital lingered in Sam's mind. He hoped the stranger had gotten the help he needed. It was a small gesture, just one ride, but to Sam it felt like the only choice. Later that night, as Sam lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling and thought about the day. Life had a way of surprising him both in its challenges and in its fleeting moments of connection. He had no way of knowing that his act of kindness had set something extraordinary into motion, something that would soon change his life forever. The next morning, Sam rose early, the faint light of dawn spilling through the curtains. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets damp and glistening under a pale morning sky. He brewed his coffee and prepared for another day behind the wheel. Hartford was already stirring to life as he pulled out of the driveway, the hum of distant traffic a familiar backdrop. The memory of the sick man lingered in his thoughts. Sam couldn't help but wonder if the man had gotten the treatment he needed, if he had family waiting by his bedside, or if he was navigating his illness alone. Sam's job was full of brief encounters, faces that came and went like passing clouds, but this one had stuck with him. Business was slow that morning. Sam parked near a small bakery, sipping his coffee and watching as commuters shuffled in and out, clutching warm bags of pastries. His first fare of the day was a young teacher running late for a meeting at a school across town. She talked excitedly about her students, and Sam nodded along, offering polite encouragement. It wasn't a long trip, but her enthusiasm reminded him of Lily's energy when she talked about her own classroom adventures. The hours crept by, each fare a routine exchange. Around noon, his stomach growled and Sam stopped at a food truck parked near the park. He ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and sat in the cab of his taxi to eat. As he ate, the weight of his financial worries pressed on him. The rent was due in 2 weeks, the car needed maintenance, and Lily had outgrown her shoes again. The free ride he'd given yesterday wasn't going to break them, but every dollar counted. Still, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. The man's pale face and trembling hands flashed through his mind. If he'd been in the same position, Sam hoped someone would have done the same for him. By mid-afternoon, the city streets were busier, the rhythm of life picking up. Sam picked up a pair of college students headed to a library downtown, their backpacks stuffed with books. Then he ferried an elderly woman to a grocery store, helping her load her bags into the trunk with the care of someone who understood the importance of small gestures. As evening approached, Sam found himself stuck in rush-hour traffic. The stop-and-go rhythm was a familiar grind, and he let his mind wander. He thought again of the sick man from the hospital. Was he recovering? Did he have someone at home to help him? Sam's thoughts were interrupted by the blaring of a horn behind him, and he inched his taxi forward with a sigh. When he finally returned home that evening, the sun was low on the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the city. Maria was at the kitchen table, her head bent over a stack of bills. She looked up when Sam entered, her face brightening. "You're home earlier than usual," she said, standing to greet him. "Slow day," Sam replied, setting his keys on the counter. He glanced at the papers on the table and frowned. "Any surprises?" Maria shook her head, though her smile faltered. "Nothing we can't handle." Sam nodded, though the familiar ache of uncertainty tugged at him. After dinner, he read Lily a story before bed, her giggles lifting his spirits. When she finally fell asleep, he lingered by her doorway for a moment, watching the soft rise and fall of her breath. As he climbed into bed, Sam couldn't shake the thought that his life felt like a series of balancing acts, always on the edge, always relying on hope. Yet, for all the challenges, he felt an undeniable pull to keep moving forward. Acts of kindness, he believed, had a way of rippling outward, even if he never saw where they landed. Little did he know, those ripples were already making their way back to him. A week had passed since the rainy day when Sam drove the sick man to the hospital. Life had settled back into its usual rhythm, the daily grind of long hours behind the wheel leaving little room for reflection. The encounter had faded into the background of his thoughts, replaced by the immediate demands of rent deadlines, Lily's growing needs, and the ever-present hum of financial strain. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon when something out of the ordinary happened. Sam had just finished a fare downtown and decided to stop at a gas station to refuel. As he stood by the pump, the faint hum of an engine caught his attention. A sleek black sedan pulled into the lot, its polished exterior standing out against the worn vehicles around it. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, scanning the area before his eyes landed on Sam. "Excuse me," the man called, approaching with purposeful steps. "Are you Sam Walker?" Sam froze, caught off guard. "Yeah, that's me," he replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man extended his hand, his demeanor calm yet warm. "My name is Richard Hayes. I believe you gave my brother Henry a ride to the hospital last week." Recognition dawned on Sam, the memory of the pale, sick man flashing vividly in his mind. "Is he all right?" Sam asked quickly. Richard smiled. "He's doing much better, thanks to you. The doctor said he needed immediate surgery, and if he hadn't gotten there when he did, well, it could have been a very different outcome." Sam exhaled, relief washing over him. "That's good to hear," he said. "I'm just glad he's okay." Richard's expression softened. "My brother told me what you did, how you wouldn't take a fare and made sure he got inside safely. Not everyone would have done that, especially knowing how tight money can be for most drivers." Sam shrugged, shifting his weight uncomfortably. "It wasn't a big deal. He needed help, and I was there. Anyone would have done the same." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "I think you underestimate yourself, Mr. Walker. My brother insists on thanking you properly. Do you have a moment to talk?" Sam hesitated, unsure of what to expect, but Richard's sincerity put him at ease. "Sure," he said, gesturing toward a nearby bench. The two men sat, and Richard reached into his jacket pocket, producing a white envelope. He handed it to Sam, who opened it with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Inside was a neatly folded note and a check. As Sam unfolded the paper, his breath caught. The check was for $5,000. The note read, "Dear Sam, thank you for your kindness when I needed it most. You gave me more than a ride, you gave me hope when I felt my lowest. Please accept this as a small token of my gratitude, and as a way to ease some of the burdens you so selflessly carry. Your compassion reminds me that good people still exist in this world. With heartfelt thanks. Henry Hayes." Sam stared at the check, his mind struggling to process the number staring back at him. I can't accept this," he stammered, looking up at Richard. "You can, and you should," Richard said firmly. Henry insisted. "He's been through a lot, and he wanted to make sure you knew just how much that ride meant to him and to our family." Sam felt a lump rising in his throat. "I don't know what to say. It's too much." Richard placed a reassuring hand on Sam's shoulder. "Say thank you, and then do something good for yourself and your family. You've earned it." Sam nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," he said finally. "This means more than I can put into words." Richard stood, giving Sam a warm smile. "Take care, Sam, and keep being the kind of person who makes the world a better place." As the black sedan pulled away, Sam sat on the bench for a long moment, the envelope clutched in his hands. Gratitude and disbelief swirled within him. It wasn't just about the money, though the financial relief was overwhelming. It was about the validation of his quiet acts of kindness, the knowledge that they truly mattered. When Sam returned home that evening, Maria and Lily were waiting for him. Maria greeted him with her usual smile, but it faltered when she saw his expression. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Sam handed her the envelope, his hands still trembling slightly. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Maria opened it, her eyes widening as she read the note and saw the check. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at Sam. This is incredible." Lily peeked curiously at the check. "Daddy, what is it?" Sam knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "It's a gift, sweetheart. A reminder that being kind can make a difference." That night, As the family sat together planning how to use the money, their laughter and relief filled the small apartment. For the first time in a long while, Sam felt a lightness in his chest, a sense of possibility he hadn't known he was missing. The days after receiving the check were a whirlwind for Sam and his family. The first priority was using the money wisely, and Maria took the lead. Together they sat at the kitchen table late into the night, listing their expenses and prioritizing what needed immediate attention. "First, we pay off the rent," Maria said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "No more worrying about being late." "And the taxi," Sam added. "The tires are practically bald, and the brakes have been squealing for months." Maria nodded, jotting it down. "What about setting a little aside for Lily? Maybe something for her future?" Sam smiled, glancing at Lily, who was busy drawing at the other end of the table. "Absolutely," he said. "We'll make sure she has something to hold on to." The relief of financial stability, even if temporary, was palpable. Maria deposited the check, and Sam brought the taxi to a repair shop the next day. For the first time in years, he didn't have to haggle or worry about cutting corners. The mechanic replaced the tires, tuned the engine, and fixed the brakes, leaving the cab running like new. "I feel like I'm driving a brand new car," Sam told Maria that evening, his grin wide as they shared dinner. "You deserve it," Maria replied. "And now maybe you won't come home so exhausted every night." Despite the newfound breathing room, Sam stayed true to his routines. He woke up early, worked long hours, and treated his passengers with the same kindness and respect as always. The memory of Henry Hayes and his family's generosity gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Every time he picked up a fare, he thought about how one small act of kindness had rippled outward in ways he could never have predicted. A week later, Sam had another unexpected encounter. He was parked near a community center when a familiar voice called out, "Hey, Sam." He turned to see Henry Hayes walking toward him. Henry looked healthier, though still a bit frail. He wore a warm coat and carried a small bag of groceries. Sam greeted him with genuine surprise. "Good to see you up and about. How are you feeling?" "Better every day," Henry replied, smiling. "The doctors say it'll take time, but I'm on the mend." "I'm glad to hear that," Sam said. "You gave us all quite a scare." Henry chuckled, his gratitude evident in his expression. "I'll never forget what you did for me. I've been thinking a lot about how people like you make the world better, one small gesture at a time." "It was nothing," Sam said modestly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Henry replied, his tone serious. "You did what only someone with a big heart would do." They chatted for a few more minutes before Henry waved goodbye, promising to stay in touch. As Sam watched him walk away, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The encounter reminded him that the simplest choices, like stopping for someone in need, could leave a lasting impact. Over the next few weeks, Sam noticed changes in how he approached his work. He found himself going out of his way more often, offering an extra helping hand to passengers, forgiving small debts when someone was short on cash, and listening more deeply to the stories people shared. One afternoon, he picked up an elderly woman on her way to visit her grandson. She struggled to climb into the taxi, and Sam stepped out to help her. She smiled warmly and said, "It's rare to find someone so kind these days." "Thank you." Another evening, a young college student realized halfway through the ride that she'd left her wallet at home. Embarrassed, she apologized profusely, but Sam waved it off. "Don't worry about it," he said. "Just pay it forward someday." These moments began to fill Sam with a sense of purpose beyond just earning a living. His passengers noticed, too. They left larger tips, wrote positive reviews, and shared their appreciation in ways that lifted his spirits. One quiet evening at home, Maria handed Sam a small package. "What's this?" he asked, eyeing it curiously. "Open it and see," she said, her smile playful. Inside was a sleek leather-bound notebook and a pen. On the first page, in Lily's careful handwriting, were the words for Daddy's stories. "You're always telling us about your passengers," Maria said. "Now you can write them down. Who knows? Maybe someday the world will read them." Sam stared at the notebook, a lump forming in his throat. He hugged Maria and Lily tightly, feeling more supported than ever. That night, as he sat at the kitchen table, he opened the notebook and began to write. Sam's first entry in the notebook came slowly, the blank page staring back at him like an unfamiliar road. But once he began to write, the words poured out, capturing the rainy day when he had driven Henry Hayes to the hospital. He described the encounter in vivid detail, from the man's trembling hands to the relief on his face when Sam told him not to worry about the fare. Writing it down felt like reliving the moment, and when he finished, he found himself smiling. The notebook quickly became a nightly ritual. After long days behind the wheel, Sam would sit at the kitchen table, a cup of tea by his side, and document the lives that had passed through his cab. He wrote about the elderly couple who shared their love story on the way to the park, the construction worker who beamed with pride as he talked about the house he was building for his family, and the young woman who made it to her train, just in time to be by her mother's side for surgery. Maria often sat nearby, reading or folding laundry, but her presence was a quiet encouragement. She would glance over his shoulder occasionally, commenting on how beautiful the stories were. "You have a gift, Sam," she told him one night. "These stories make people feel seen." Word about Sam's notebook began to spread among his passengers. A local librarian, whom Sam drove regularly, asked to read a few entries. She was so moved by them that she suggested he submit them to the community column of the town's newspaper. Though hesitant, Sam decided to give it a try. To his surprise, the editor loved the stories and began publishing one each week. The response was overwhelming. Letters and emails poured in from readers who said the stories brightened their day or inspired them to show kindness in their own lives. Sam's stories of everyday compassion resonated deeply, reminding people of the beauty in small human connections. Encouraged by the response, Sam kept writing. A few months later, a small publishing house reached out, offering to compile the stories into a book. Sam was stunned. He had never thought of himself as a writer, just a man who loved meeting people and listening to their stories. But with Maria's encouragement, he agreed to the project. When the book was published, it became a modest success. Local bookstores hosted signings, and Sam found himself in the unusual position of being recognized by strangers who had read his stories. Passengers would climb into his taxi and say, "Are you the Sam from the stories? I loved the one about the elderly couple." Despite the newfound attention, Sam remained the same. He still woke up early, still drove long hours, and still treated every passenger with the same respect and kindness that had always guided him. The difference was that now, he understood the full impact of his actions. Each ride, each moment of connection, had the potential to ripple outward in ways he might never see. One evening, as Sam parked his taxi and stepped into his home, Lily ran to greet him, waving a piece of paper in her hand. "Daddy, look," she exclaimed. Sam took the paper and saw a drawing of their family, a smiling Maria, an excited Lily, and himself behind the wheel of his taxi, with a notebook on the dashboard. Above it, Lily had written in colorful letters, "Kindness makes the world go round." Tears welled in Sam's eyes as he hugged her tightly. "It sure does, sweetheart," he said. That night, as he sat with Maria and Lily, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a rainy day and a simple act of compassion, his life had been transformed in ways he never imagined. The financial relief had been a blessing, but it was the deeper connections and the affirmation of his values that had truly enriched his world. As he opened his notebook to begin a new story, Sam smiled, knowing his journey of kindness and connection was far from over. The ripples would continue, touching lives in ways he might never fully understand. And for Sam, that was more than enough.